I'm Andy Hines with Hines Pool & Spa in Austin, Texas. Today we're going to talk about pool maintenance in the off-season, the winter season, those times when there are no swimmers. And I'll start with water testing. You still want to test the water in the off-season, but you can do it less frequently. Keep your chlorine at least half to 1 part per million in the off-season, whereas in the season, the summertime, you may be at 2, 3, or 4 parts per million to keep the water sanitized for all the users that you have. In the winter, you don't need to do that, and you can let that chlorine level drop a little bit. But on the water balance, the pH, the total alkalinity, the calcium hardness, you want to make sure those stay in balance at all times. Those are water balance features, and they can affect the heaters, the metal components in the system, and the surface of the swimming pool. So those should always stay in balance. If you're typically testing twice a week in the summer, once a week or every 10 days is sufficient. However, if you start to see some algae growth or something like that, test at that point. You would probably be too low in chlorine. I'm often asked, how long should I run my swimming pool pump? It's a good question. Oftentimes it's not done right, maybe running too long or not enough. The first question we must ask is, how much usage is my pool getting? In the summertime, we may have 10 or 15 people a day in our backyard pool. And in those situations, my pump runs 24/7, all week. People will say, well, don't you use too much electricity? The amount of electricity I spend on running my pool 24/7 in the summer is much less than what I'd spend on chemicals to try to make up for the algae growth, etc., that would start to harbor if I don't circulate the pool enough. Now jump to the winter. In the off season, 1 hour a day is sufficient typically when there's not a lot of leaves and debris falling into the pool. So there's a giant difference between on season and off season. Always make sure you've got a freeze guard so that in times of freezing weather you've got an automated controller that'll turn your pump on and circulate water through the system. Water is one of those crazy substances that expands when it freezes. So when in heavy use times during the summer, I would no less than 16 to 18 hours a day, up to 24 when the usage is really heavy. After a party, make sure you run your pool 2 straight days to get rid of all the waste and debris that has been introduced in that heavy use period. The next aspect of off-season pool maintenance is taking care of the leaves and debris that blow in the fall. And in Austin, Texas, we have live oaks that dump in the spring. So have a good sturdy leaf net on the ready, skimming the surface on a daily basis in those very heavy leaf drop times. Also, this is a great tool for getting any big piles of leaves that have developed on the bottom of the pool. It's a much quicker way than trying to vacuum that big concentration of leaves. Here we have 2 tools for getting debris up off the bottom of the pool. First is the traditional vacuum head. And in the summer it works beautifully. In the winter it can work beautifully if you don't have too many leaves. But if you have large piles of leaves, they have a tendency of clogging your suction hole here. Or in your very curvy vacuum hose, those leaves can plug up in a certain area. So if there's lots of leaves in the pool, I don't recommend the vacuum head. We have the leaf eater, which is powered by fresh water from your water hose. It's got a very large entrance to take in as many leaves as we can put through it, and a very large bag to hold those leaves. So if you've got lots of leaves, this is the tool to use to pick them up. Now be aware, the smaller sediment and debris could easily go through this mesh polyester bag, but that's okay. The point is to get the more difficult to clean up leaves and debris off the bottom. So the leaf eater, although we don't have lots of leaves at this point in time, you can see how the water pressure is blowing up the bag, and there's a really positive suction there which would pick up any leaves or debris on the bottom of the pool. It's a great tool. Another maintenance procedure, which isn't specific necessarily to off-season maintenance, is brushing. I've got an 18-inch nylon wall brush, and it's probably the least used tool in most people's backyards, but I think it's the most important. When you get algae developed, it starts in the pores of the plaster, and you don't even see algae for about 48 hours after it's already begun to grow. The brush, when used, will brush those spores out of the porous wall and into the body of water where chlorine can kill it. A brushed pool also is a cleaner pool. So don't forget weekly brushing, walls and floor. And don't forget your steps and your swim outs and your underwater benches.